How's it going, guys? It's Kass. As always, if you've been enjoying my content, then hit that subscribe button. So in today's video, we're going to be talking about something I'm sure many of you guys have seen. Recently, Asmongold stumbled upon a group of botters in this specific location that you're seeing right now, and basically spent a few, I assume, hours on stream talking about botting, talking about how rampant botting is, showing off this spot, and just like generally protesting botting. He made some comments that I'd like to talk about botting specifically, and just generally talk about why it's gotten as bad as it has. How Blizzard's detection works is it's going to always be a game of cat and mouse, where unfortunately Blizzard is the cat and the botters are the mouse. When it comes to software and software detection, it's a very complex problem. Anytime that you make changes to a system to detect software, it's a lot easier to create a new version of the software to get around it than it is to actually create a new detection platform for that software. So when we start to think back to the old days in Mist of Pandaria and WoD, when things like Honor Buddy and crawler bots and all of these things were very rampant, the way that Blizzard got around it and really kind of killed off these style of bots, these widespread cheap platforms, was by implementing a system called the Warden. What the Warden did is it read the memory of the player's computer and looked for specific batch files inside of the program that were being called directly to interact with World of Warcraft. And while at the time this was a good fix to actually stop the majority of the people using these cheats, the issue is that over time they would consistently update the cheat softwares to get past the Warden over and over again, until it got to a point where Blizzard would continually update the Warden with the newest software that they were developing, and it just got to the point where it was no longer a profitable business strategy for the cheat developers to continually have to worry about getting around the Warden. On top of that, they also sued the owners of Honor Buddy, although I believe they actually lost that court case, if I remember correctly, which is kind of interesting to think about, that you could actually lose a case directly about people infringing on the terms of service in your game, which is kind of wild. But I'm pretty sure they actually lost that. I think the case happened in Germany. So anyway, after they got to the point where they basically ran the major bot companies out of business, botting kind of died for the majority of the Legion expansion when it came to just general presence of botters. There's still obviously botters in the game with either proprietary software or software that just generally wasn't as widespread available, that wasn't being detected, but realistically it wasn't as rampant as it was. And the main thing about the botting back then is that a lot of the botting would happen in public places like we're seeing now, where there's consistently players moving around, whether that be like an instance, like one instance that comes to mind is Bastion of Twilight in Twilight Highlands. That one was super rampant during the botting in WoD, and some of the Mist of Pandaria areas where you could farm Gulash or the cache keys. That was also a pretty big rampant botting wave. As time went on and as systems developed in WoW, they actually made botting easier because of the way that hyper spawning works and the way that sharding works and the way that some instances work. So I think the thing is when Asmongold was actually talking about it, he was talking about how it's gotten worse than it was in BFA. And actually, I think it's probably gotten better. The thing is that the bots that we're seeing now have to do this in public. The main thing is back in BFA, a lot of the bots that we would run into were actually bots that weren't doing it smart. The smart bots were doing things that were done in instance quest areas, where if you didn't finish a quest line, you just had the quest line in your quest log, you'd be in a completely different instance than the majority of the players that weren't just doing that quest at the time. So people would go into mass groups inside of these instance areas and be farming in there where players weren't around. And if you can't detect the actual botting software from reading memory, it makes it so you get to a point where these bots only get detected by players. And now if you get to a point where players aren't able to see the bots either, then you don't get player detection, and you also don't get a lot of information about the bots because player detection is the first line that Blizzard has. So while botting does look like it's very rampant now, when just looking at the different places that I've shown in the background here, it is going to get to a situation where hopefully it's better because these people are forced to do it in public, because a lot of those instance areas have been patched. I'm sure there's probably things currently that people are doing right now that are in instanced areas that the botters just haven't found yet. And once they do find them, they will be doing the exact same thing you're seeing right now in those areas. And that's really the issue when it comes to botting in general, is that if there's not good places for players to continually report these players, and there's not a constant system that's looking for these things, it's going to be very hard to detect. Another big thing that may also help us when it comes to combating bots was the recent changes to multi-boxing. A lot of the multi-boxing changes are direct changes to hopefully combat bots. When we think about sending something through memory, specifically keystrokes and things like that, it's very, very hard to detect the difference between a multi-boxing software sending a keystroke to memory and versus a bot doing that. And then also you had some botters that were actually using those multi-boxing softwares in order to send keystrokes to computers to run their bots on specifically. So instead of playing the actual game, they were basically playing the multi-boxing software for the actual game, which is kind of the way that they were getting around it. So now with those programs being banned and those programs being monitored and automatically banned, we'll get to a point where hopefully some of those people using those systems to bypass it for botting specifically also get hit. And really, that's the unfortunate situation when it comes to bots, is we'll never get to a point where bots don't exist. We'll hopefully get to a point where bots aren't a major factor in the economy. And that's going to take a lot of time. It's going to take a lot of just general development from Blizzard. And honestly, I don't really think it's something that's ever going to be a profitable situation for Blizzard. And I don't think it's ever going to actually happen. I think the biggest thing is making sure that instanced farms don't really exist, so players get more access to be that first line of defense for Blizzard to ban or to report players like this, so GMs have a constant flow of information and developers also have a constant flow of information of the type of pathing these bots use, of the type of scripts that they run, all of these things that make it a little bit easier to detect these. So while botting may look bad now, I think hopefully we'll get to a point where there's a lot less access to botting and it's a lot less of a reliable solution for the more casual botters. Because the thing is when you look at bots like this, where they're running multiple accounts in one area, these people are people that are doing this for a living, that are selling gold consistently, that probably get to a point where they can afford to get all these accounts banned multiple times in order to continue the operations that they're running, unfortunately. And that's just the situation that we're in currently when it comes to RMT and games in general. So I hope that this video gave you some in-depth information about how botting works and how their detection works for botting. I also hope that it gives you some idea on what we need to do as players when we see things like this, because we are the first line of defense. We have to report these players. We have to make sure that Blizzard knows that this is something that isn't okay in the game and that they have to actually put things towards fixing these problems. As always, if you liked the video, leave a like. If you didn't like the video, F5, refresh, try it again. Maybe you'll like it the second time. Have a good one.